Hi, this is Marshall Jones, and this video is part of a series of videos on synchronous online teaching. In this video, I'm talking about direct instruction. Direct instruction is probably what you're familiar with in a face-to-face classroom, and that is that there's a topic, and you are presenting information on that topic, and you are engaging in discussions with your students. Now, hopefully you are talking with them and not just talking at them. So direct instruction in a synchronous online class can feel sort of like direct instruction in a face-to-face class, but there are some issues that you need to be aware of. One is internet connection, and part of that is the fact that your students are going to need a robust internet connection to participate well. Synchronous online classrooms, because they carry both video signal and audio signal, they require a robust connection, and they're very resource intensive. They take up a lot of bandwidth for your internet connection. So eventually, everybody is going to experience an internet connection problem, and that means you have to be patient with students. You will be at some point facing an internet connection problem as well. And you're going to need to inform your students that they're going to have to be patient with you as well. One way that you can manage the bandwidth is that you can turn off webcams, because that means that you're spending less bandwidth on your video signal. Many people are uncomfortable with that because they want to be able to see their students. They're used to be able to looking in students' eyes and seeing them get that. There are some strategies that you can use, and we'll talk about those in just a moment as well. Beyond your internet connection, there is something that is known as lag time. When you speak into your microphone and you broadcast that information out to your students, your voice is going to a server somewhere, and then that server is sending that information out to your students. That means that there's going to be a lag between you saying something and your students hearing it and them responding to you. So unlike a face-to-face classroom where this communication happens in real time and you're looking into people's faces and you're waiting for those signals to know that either somebody is going to answer a question or you're going to need to prompt them to answer that question, that is what we refer to as wait time. So wait time, the time between you ask a question and the students respond to it, in a face-to-face classroom, you're probably used to managing that. In an online classroom, you need to understand that that time is going to be longer. So give yourself a little more time before you begin prompting students. But if you were in a face-to-face classroom and students weren't responding, you would call on them. Do that in a synchronous classroom as well. But one of the biggest problems that you're going to face is that your synchronous online classroom is on the internet, which means you're competing with everything. You're competing with social media, online shopping, Netflix. It's possible for students to log in and have their name show up, but them not actually be in the classroom or be attending. There are some strategies that you can use, and we'll talk about some of those in just a moment as well. There are, of course, advantages of synchronous classrooms. One is the ability to do breakout rooms or to put students into small groups and interact with each other. You can do that in classrooms, but oftentimes in classrooms, the room becomes really noisy and the students can be distracted by each other's groups. In a breakout room within a synchronous online classroom, that's just them in that room. They're the only people that they're talking to. You may show up in that room as well with them, but there are some advantages to having that breakout on the internet. The other is the chat function. And the chat function can really help you to see if your students are getting it. It's a way for you to get them involved in the discussion in real time. But another advantage is that your class is on the internet, which means that you have access to the entire internet that you can bring in to your lesson. One way that you can make direct instruction more engaging for your learners is to have them do small group work. so that you can place your students into breakout rooms and they can work on particular tasks. You might take a complex problem, break it up into smaller issues, have small groups of students work on that, and then come back and report to the main room. This does a couple of things. One is it gives you that same type of interaction that you might get in a face-to-face classroom. It also gets students actively engaged in the learning process, and it holds them responsible for working through content and not just listening to you talk. So small group work is an excellent way to take advantage of a synchronous online class. There are tools such as Blackboard Collaborate which allow for that function, and you can put people into rooms, into breakout rooms, but they're still in the main room. If your synchronous learning tool does not allow for that, then you may need to get creative and creating separate breakout rooms as well so that learners know where they're supposed to go when they are working within a small group. As I mentioned earlier, your class is on the internet. That means you can take advantage of all the information that's out there. You can assign people a task and have them do what I like to call real-time research, where they are individually or in a group looking online for information for a particular problem. You can assign this task, you can set a timer, and then you can call them back when they're done. So you're going to give them permission to leave, in a sense, the synchronous classroom to do their research, but they're going to stay logged into the classroom. So this allows them to go out, take notes, perhaps text people in class so that they are able to connect with each other. But you need to make sure that they're still in the classroom so that you can call them back. They still got their speakers on, they've got their headphones on, they can hear you call them back when that timer is up. One of my favorite tools to use in a synchronous online classroom is the chat function. A lot of teachers will turn it off because they feel like it's distracting to see. I take a completely different view on that. I like to see running discussions from my students in classrooms. In the same way that you can look into a student's eyes in a face-to-face classroom and watch them get it, you can read the comments of a chat discussion that's happening in real time to see them get it as well. Students will oftentimes ask questions in a chat window that they might not ask while you're talking because they're being polite. They don't want to interrupt you when you're in mid-thought. But they can ask that question in the chat function, and that question gets asked immediately. So you get this running discussion and you're sort of watching cognition happen in action. Now, it can be really, really difficult to keep up with. It's sort of like it's like the heads-up display in a fighter jet because you've got so much information coming to you at one time. Eventually, you kind of get good at it because you realize you can scan the chats as they're happening in real time. If you are fortunate enough to teach at a university that provides you with TAs for a large section, then this is an excellent thing for your TAs to do. Your TAs can manage the chats, they can pull out the important questions, your TAs can watch for what's going on in those classrooms, and you can spend your focus on the presentation that you're doing. If you don't have TAs to help you manage it, you can assign this job to students. I do this often. I will say to students in a synchronous online classroom that this week, you 3 people are my teaching assistants, and your job is to manage the chat windows and make sure that I get all the important questions. So that means that I am giving them permission to not to interrupt me, but to feed me those important questions as I might need them within the class. But another really nice thing about the chat function is that at the end of it, you can save all of those messages. So you have then, and depending on the tool that you're using, you have everything that everybody has said, and usually it says their name. So if they're logged in with the name Marshall Jones, everything they say will be preceded by Marshall Jones : so that You can get a feel for who's participating. You can get a feel for who's got problems. You can get trends that you're seeing within the content as you're presenting them. And not just in real time, but so that after the class you can go back and read this chat log and reflect upon it and see what you might do better. Online classrooms really do provide a whole lot of tools that you don't actually get in a face-to-face classroom. It is certainly different, but that difference can also be incredibly freeing. Hopefully, these techniques and strategies will be useful to you as you think about teaching online synchronously, and hopefully it will give you the freedom to think of some other ways that you might use a synchronous online classroom to your advantage. I'm Marshall Jones, and this has been Strategies for Synchronous Online Teaching Using Direct Instruction. Thanks for watching.